welcome to Straight Talk, brought to you by the Santa Clara County Democratic Club. My name is Craig Dunkerley. I'll be your host today. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I'm also South Bay coordinator for a California Clean Money campaign. Today we're going to be talking about public financing of campaigns at different levels of government. And we're very privileged to have with us today Sunnyvale City Councilman Chris Moylan, who's done considerable research on this topic over the last year or so. So welcome, Councilman Moylan.
Thanks, Craig.
Maybe we could start by, you could tell us a little bit about how you first became aware of public financing of campaigns, how the idea first came to your attention, and what prompted your further investigation of the topic.
Okay. Well, for years I've been one of those people who checks a little box on the federal income tax returns. I think that's about 10% of the population that does that.
Yeah. But it used to be a lot more. Yeah. And right after they implemented it in the late 70s, they did an education program to explain to people what that was and why it was a good idea. But the education program kind of petered out, and then people have forgotten what it is. Did you happen to know, by the way, that $3 is not an additional tax? It's $3 out of the taxes you're already paying. So it doesn't even cost you anything extra.
I absolutely knew that. In fact, that's one of the reasons I check it is I like to think that I controlled $3 of where my tax money went to.
You have some control over how these funds get allocated.
Correct.
Okay, so you were checking off that box.
So I knew about that at the federal level. But when I was running for city council in 2005, it was brought up at one of the community forums, why don't we have this for city council elections? And I had not thought of it before. And so once I got on the council, I decided to look into the issue and did some research. And I did discover some things that suggested we might need to look at that. In particular, the cost per candidate in Sunnyvale has been escalating to the point where the year I ran in one of the other races, the winner spent $102,000.
Wow.
I had to spend in the 40s, which was approximately double what everyone told me I was going to have to spend to win the race. And at the same time that the cost per candidate has been going up and up and up, the number of candidates running for the seats has been going down. I think it's pretty obvious that might be a factor.
There's probably a correlation there, yeah.
Because if you win a council race, you could always hold a fundraiser after the fact to help pay down your debt. I did it. Many other people have done it. If you lose your race, you eat that debt. And so I think a lot of people who are citizens who would do a good job as council members look at that and say, but what if I lose? Then I'm in the hole for $40,000. Most of us can't afford that.
Yeah. So the money just to run a campaign becomes a block or an impediment to people participating in the democracy. And which we're always talking about how we want people to be engaged and participate in democracy, but then the way the system is set up oftentimes discourages that and makes it very difficult for people with good ideas, who are public spirited, who have reached a point in their life where they'd like to give something back, and the money can oftentimes be an impediment to that. So,
Craig, you are absolutely right. Our city has several policies stating exactly what you said, that we should do everything we can to increase the level of civic engagement and encourage people to be involved. And if you start saying you have to pay $45,000 if you want to have a chance to win a city council race, a lot of people are going to just turn and head for the door.
Yeah.
So this is an attempt to mitigate that.
Yeah.
One of the key pieces of any public financing program is that candidates must agree to a voluntary spending limit. You cannot impose a spending limit on political candidates. That's already been decided by the courts. It's one of those things that has somehow been linked into the penumbras of free speech, like flag burning and lap dances. None of them, writing a check and giving a lap dance and burning a flag, none of them involve actually speaking, but they've all been interpreted by the courts as to be protected by the First Amendment.
Expression.
Right. So what you can do is say, all right, in exchange for the city subsidizing your campaign, or in the case of full public financing, paying for the whole campaign, you agree to spend no more than X amount of money. And that is the way you could stop this arms race.
Yeah.
So in the case of Sunnyvale, we looked at all the numbers to how much people have been spending, and it's true, the winning candidates have averaged spending about $43,000. And so we said, okay, we could either do a full public financing program and say, all right, we'll pay for the whole thing if you agree to spend no more than, say, $50,000. Or we could say, if you agree to spend no more than $50,000, we'll pay for half of it, do a subsidy. And the council formed a subcommittee on this, consisting of my colleagues Otto Lee and Ron Sweegels and myself. And we've completed our homework into this. We've done some serious policy wonkism and delved into all the details. And so we have a report coming back to the council. We're looking to get on the calendar to discuss this. And what we're coming back to the council to recommend is a partial public financing program, basically paying for approximately half of what the spending limit should be.
So the proposal would be not to pay for the whole thing, but to at least make this subsidy, which will make it a lot easier for candidates to participate. I'm struck by when a public-spirited person decides that maybe they'd like to get jump into the fray and make a difference in their local government, that if they happen to go to a political consultant, the first thing that consultant is going to ask them is not, well, what are your ideas, or what are your plans for Sunnyvale, or what would you like to do to really turn things around or improve various things about the life in Sunnyvale. It's more likely going to be, how much money can you raise, or how much money do you already have?
That's increasingly true at higher levels of office.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues was approached about running for assembly, and the first question was, how much money can you pull up? In my case, at city council level, that wasn't actually the first question the consultant asked, but it did come up.
Little easier at the municipal level, but and the fact that it's gradually becoming more of a challenge at the local level, I think, is indicative of what's happening all over the country at various levels of government.
And we should probably explain why they need to have that money, what that money goes for.
Yeah.
At presidential elections and often at state elections, the money is going for TV commercials. The sad fact is a whole lot of voters base their decision on what they see on TV.
Yeah.
At city council elections, it's not the same. Particularly for a new candidate, someone who is running for the first time. The critical job of that campaign is to introduce the candidate to voters. Say, here's who the candidate is, here's what that person's positions are, so that the voters can compare that candidate to the others. And if the voter has never heard of that person, there's a lot of work to be done. So the most effective piece of campaigning is actually free. That's precinct walking. And in the one election out of the last 11 where the person who didn't spend the most amount of money won, that person way outwalked the other person. For all the other 10 out of the last 11 races, the person who spent the most money won, and what they're spending that money on is those mailers that come to people. In Sunnyvale, with our population of about 137,000, our number of registered voters, which is somewhere in the 50s, based on the number of those registered voters who show up in our elections, it costs about $10,000 to send out one mailer. And
boy,
typically,
it adds up quick.
Yeah, right. So, in my case, I planned to do 3. I end up having to do 4 to respond to stuff late in the campaign.
Yikes.
There's always those people who want to hit you with some negative thing late in the campaign, and you have to respond to it. Also, newspaper endorsements came out late in the campaign, and it was deemed important that I sent out a mailer showing the 3 newspaper endorsements. So I ended up doing 1 more mailer than I'd planned, and even 3 was a lot. So that's why I ended up having to raise over $40,000 to win the race. It's the mailers that are the primary expense for people at the city council level.
So being willing to work helps a lot, and get out and walk those precincts. But the mailers is really how you reach an awful lot of people.
Right. You can't meet everybody. So for the people you can't meet, you got to at least send them a flyer.